I'm delighted to have this session, and it's the student panel. And it's a group of students from George Mason University who will introduce themselves. But this is a constructed panel by them for this particular audience. And it's titled, Teach Us What We Need to Know, Student Voices on AI Skills for Public Health Practice. And our moderator is Megan Warner, again, PhD candidate in the Department of Global and Community Health. And she will have the honor to introduce our panelists for this session.
Hi. So you get to hear from me again. Hopefully not too much because we have this wonderful group of panelists here. Okay, so again, my name is Megan Warner. I'm a PhD candidate, and I'm really honored and excited to be here today. I'm thankful for Dr. Weiler for reaching out and asking to do the student panel. When I started my PhD in fall of 2022, ChatGPT was being used, I feel like, in whispers. Like, people were kind of using it, but no one really wanted to talk about it out loud. And so the fact that we're here today talking about it, I think is really great. It's a really great improvement, and I'm excited for you guys to hear from this wonderful panel of students that we have. So I will introduce today, we have, let me find my place on my paper. Anika is a fourth year, you raise your hand so everyone knows, here she is a fourth year interdisciplinary undergraduate researcher pursuing a major in biology with a concentration in microbiology. Currently under the mentorship of Dr. Weinstein at the College of Public Health, she is examining differences between those with clinical and non-clinical fatigue on physical and mental performance in breast cancer survivors. So she's our undergraduate representative today. Elizabeth, do you want me to call you Elizabeth or Liz? Okay, we're gonna go with Liz, is a licensed social worker and first-year PhD student at George Mason. While pursuing her MSW, she also worked as a study coordinator and research administrator at Temple University, where she oversaw the daily operations of a randomized clinical trial testing the efficacy of an intervention to treat dental anxiety. Her research is focused on the effects of exposures to allergens from urban pests, such as cockroaches and rodents, on child and mental health outcomes. And she's currently recruiting for a qualitative study. If anyone knows anyone that is a parent who is exposed to urban pests, she would love to connect with you, or if you know someone who would like to connect with her. Just putting that out there for you. Rooshna Mohsin, or I will say Dr. Rooshna Mohsin, is a recent PhD graduate. With a PhD in public health at George Mason University with a concentration in epidemiology. She previously received her MPH in epidemiology at Rutgers University and a Bachelor's of Science in Biology at the College of New Jersey. Her work sits at the intersection of environmental and reproductive epidemiology and advanced statistical methodologies. And she is on our student panel because she's currently transitioning from student to workforce, so we wanted her perspective from that. And I guess should I sit? Sorry. And then our last panelist is Duua, is a Master's of Public Health candidate in Global Health at George Mason. After earning her Bachelor's of Science in Public Health from George Mason in 2025, she continued directly into the university's MPH program to further explore her interests in research, health policy, and transnational health concerns. Her experience spans oncology research, cancer survivorship, healthcare access, and scientific communication. So we have a great panelist here today. They have really great insights. I worked with most everyone here, and I am really excited for you to hear from them. So to get us started, I will sit down. That's how I guess you're supposed to do. To get us started, I would like to ask our panelists, how would you describe currently your relationship with AI as a student? And whoever wants to start. Is it on?
Okay, yes. My relationship with AI, I personally think that as long as it's being used as a supplement and as a tool to sort of enhance your learning and better your understanding of it, that's okay. But I don't agree with it replacing like critical thinking skills or actually doing the assignment. So I think if you're using it as a tool to better understand something or to maybe do something that's like tedious or robotic that would like be more efficient and not necessarily replace like your own analysis and your own like personally doing the assignment, that's fine, but I wouldn't use it to like completely replace actually doing the assignment. So, yeah.
Hello, does it work? Okay. I would superficially probably say my relationship with it changes every day. Some days I think it's incredible with helping with problem solving, and then other days I absolutely hate it and it doesn't work and nothing makes sense. But just piggybacking off of what you just said, I think it's a great tool, and that's where it should remain as a tool and not take away from the critical thinking.
I think I really agree with what you guys said. I agree with your point on AI helping me understand concepts in my coursework that I may have struggled to understand by myself, or I would have misinterpreted it if I was trying to understand it by myself. I think when I first started out with research, I didn't have a lot of formal training in that area. So in the beginning, I really had a tough time grasping, like if I was going through a paper, I would struggle to understand certain concepts. And I've been really fortunate enough to have really open communication with my mentors about where it's appropriate to use AI or not. I would never use it to, like you guys mentioned, I would never use it to do the work for me, especially in like scientific writing or anything, but I think it can also be really, really useful as a tool. I use it a lot as like a study buddy, essentially, when I'm like prepping for final exams or prepping for my midterms. If I have any questions that I needed to, help me understand certain concepts, I think it can also be really, really useful at the same time.
I agree with what everyone has said so far. I like how you described it as a study buddy, because I think that's when it is at its best. My relationship with AI has developed, I have tried to set really hard boundaries with it, so I don't let it write anything for me, but recently I've been struggling with my relationship with AI in that regard because it often will suggest ways that I should write something, and then I'll be like, no, I don't want to even look at that because now it's in my mind. So my relationship with AI, I would say, is good, but developing every day.
Yeah, thank you. Would anyone share an experience or a moment this semester or last semester when AI helped you understand something, not just get something done, but helped you understand something that you were trying to learn in class?
For me personally, I think sometimes when I like take notes for class, it's like very like stream of conscious. I just like write things down. And so sometimes I find AI useful with like organizing those notes and sort of like formatting it in a way that's like easy for me to like skim over and look at. So it's like still my notes, but in like a better format so I can like actually go back and look at them. Because sometimes I would notice that I would like write, like I would take notes, but because they're so like messy and all over the place, I wouldn't really like go back and look at them and be able to like understand them better. So I think in that context, it's helpful.
Yeah.
I'll go. In complete honesty, I haven't had to take a course in like 2 years now. So I will give you a more recent example that's out of the classroom, but still kind of relatable to undergraduates and master's students where you're applying to a job or you're interviewing or something. So very recently, I had to learn Python in like 2 days. So I'm very well versed in R Studio and SAS, and I have never touched Python. So I was looking at those bootcamp videos, a lot of YouTube videos, Kaggle, all of the things, right? And I was like, you know what? Let me see what AI is going to tell me. Like, let me see if it can break things down for me, because I was understanding things, but was really struggling with like committing it to memory and applying it into a project or something like that the way I wanted to. And it was really, really helpful with really breaking things down in a way that I otherwise may not have been able to. And I think because, like I think you had mentioned, like your AI kind of warms up to you, and it was taking things that I had previously mentioned, like, hey, I'm struggling with this code, and it would apply that to, you've previously mentioned this struggle, In Python, this doesn't look this way, you would address it this way. And that was incredibly helpful, and I think I did a great job, so.
I actually had a similar experience. I have never received formal training to like learn SPSS and like that portion. I didn't really know what I was doing at first. So it was mostly like me looking around on YouTube for like tutorials that might like help me. And even I think like AI did a really great job of like helping me break down. Like I didn't really, like it was mostly like me playing around, trying to figure out what can do what. And then I think like I had a lot of questions along the way. And I think AI did a really great job of like explaining how things might work. And yeah, I think it can like function as a really important tool there for anything that you might not necessarily have formal training in or may not have learned in any of your coursework, but I think it can really help you, navigate those things.
I just want to add really quickly, but I agree 100%. But I think at the same time, it wasn't my only tool, right? I was using these other things. Like if I didn't have Kaggle, AI would have been useless for me in that scenario, and vice versa. So.
I recently had an experience in a class where it was the first time I wondered what I would do without AI because I had to learn something for a final, and it was like long form algebra, which I haven't really done algebra in a few years, and not in that way. And so I was really struggling with the concept. I really wanted to learn it and be excellent at it because it was important to me to be able to reproduce it on the final. And I ended up using Copilot to go over the problem again and again and to reinforce the concepts. And it took me maybe like 3 hours, and then I got it. And then by the time the final rolled around, I was very confident in my knowledge. But I remember thinking that I was so glad to have had that tool in that moment because I needed more time than an office hour would have allowed. Like I would really have needed like 3 office hours back to back of just myself. And then what was provided on Canvas was not helping me really like bridge that gap in my knowledge and my learning. And so that was the first time that I was like, that I felt I really needed it. And so that was kind of an interesting experience.
Yeah, thank you. I'll add, I used it recently to figure out how to make a visualization on SPSS because I could not figure out how to make it with the SPSS tutorials. And so I gave up with the and then went to Claude, and it gave me step-by-step how to make the visualization. So I think I agree that it can be a helpful tool. Okay, Liz, you mentioned this a little bit, and I'm curious to hear, how do you personally decide what's an appropriate use of AI for a given assignment or project? Do you have a personal rule? Do you go by what the teacher says? How do you guys decide? You can start, Liz.
So like I said before, I don't let it write for me because I don't like the way that ChatGPT writes. I think maybe a lot of people share that sentiment. And I think it's important to have your own narrative voice. Way back when ChatGPT first came around, I was like, this is great because maybe it can write the conclusions for my assignments because I hate writing the conclusions for my assignments. I think it's like, I'm already there. You've already read my paper. But then after maybe a month, once I started to just see AI more and more and how it could be used passively and hinder learning, then that's when I really put the guardrails up for myself. And since then, I haven't used it for that purpose. And so in that way, I think you learn so much by discovering what is acceptable use for yourself and also what you prefer to see among your peers or your professors. You start to get a feel for when you don't like to see it used versus when you do or when it supports your learning. And so that has been a boundary for me.
A coursework that all undergraduates at Mason have to take is English 302. It is a writing intensive class. For that class, we do a lot of literature review and a lot of formal writing. I think one of the discussions that we had with my professor, which I really appreciated, was she didn't, I think it goes knowingly that everyone will be using a little bit of AI no matter what you say in class. And I think the open discussion about where it was appropriate to use and where it wasn't was really, really important for us to have, instead of creating like a stigma around not using AI at all. We did use AI when we were all trying to brainstorm ideas for our research topic, for our paper. And our professor really encouraged that, actually, that we try to figure out what would be the best way to use it in class. And I think that was really important to help us figure out where it was appropriate to use, and like that fine line of where I should be using it and where I shouldn't. Some of our discussion boards actually encouraged the use of AI to brainstorm topic ideas, and we would also have a response that AI produced and our own response, and we could compare and contrast. And I think that was really important and really eye-opening to see like what AI would produce for that particular topic and what I could produce for myself. And I think that really helped me realize that, oh wow, like I could actually produce like better work sometimes, because AI responses can be really, really generic.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I resonate with what was already said. I typically use AI for help with coding or to help explain a concept or break it down a lot. I did actually toy with what writing with it looked like, and I mean, it does such an atrocious job, in complete honesty, and you know, the AI slop thing is real. But I actually completely forgot what the question was.
How do you decide what's an appropriate use of AI?
Oh, okay. I think what my general rule is if I put something into AI for help or to explain something, if I'm not able to take it a step further, I think it becomes passive. If I'm unable to contribute to it or take something and add on to it, or be able to apply it in a separate context outside of what I specifically asked, I think it becomes passive. And it becomes something where I'm just becoming dependent on AI as opposed to, again, using it as a tool.
I agree with everything that everyone else said. I guess my main boundary would be to not use it for anything that's creative. I don't believe in using it to completely write something or completely create a diagram or something. I know I've seen models of it, and usually it doesn't really do it perfectly. There's always typos or a weird sentence structure or something like that. So yeah, I think it's really helpful to break certain things down or to do tasks that are tedious, because I think it's supposed to be a tool that's supposed to be efficient and reduce time and do things that don't really take much brain power. But I think for the tasks that require critical analysis and certain things like that, even pattern recognition, I think it's better to do that yourself instead of leaving that totally to AI. But I think it is a helpful tool to cross-check certain things or to break concepts down.
Yeah, thank you. So to go off of that, Anika, you mentioned this a little bit, that your teacher talked about AI use in the course. And I'm curious to hear from other panelists if they've had that experience with teachers addressing AI in their coursework, and if that impacts how you do your coursework in that class. Do you carry that over to other classes? I haven't taken a course in a year or two, but I know previous to that, I only had one professor mention AI at all in the classroom. And so I am curious to know, what influence does that have when the teacher does address AI in the classroom for you guys?
I can go. So when ChatGPT first kind of came out, I think it was early 2023, the one that became publicly available, my biostatistics professor was the first person to even show me what it was. And she brought it up in class, told us a little bit about it, its history, because it wasn't the first form of it. It was just the one that, was the first one to be really somewhat good. And she actually implored us to play with it, learn it, see what utility we can take from it, because it's not going anywhere, and it's better for us to become trained in how to work with it as opposed to becoming subservient to it a little bit. And so she was the one who really taught me to think critically about it. And, that's obviously a learning experience as AI continues to, advance itself, and just trying to stay on top of it so that we're still, productive individuals in our work.
I think even adding to that, the open discussion, I think really, I've had that for one of my other classes as well, where our professor, he actually had us all take a survey at the beginning of the semester to see how we were all individually using AI to either study for that class specifically. And I think that was really, really helpful, because when I was writing down my responses, I realized that, oh wow, it actually does a lot for me to help study for this class. And again, talking about my point of it being like a study buddy, I think it can be really, really useful. And that open discussion sort of set my entire tone for that coursework in specific, that, oh, okay, this isn't something that I have to be scared of, or always think of it as a negative, something that I shouldn't use at all, but also have that clear boundary between my professor and I, and between my peers, as to what is appropriate and what's not.
And just piggybacking off what everyone else has said, I get the impression in every class I take that professors are learning how to use AI alongside us. And so a lot of times they don't have explicit guidelines other than what is university policy that they have added to their syllabus. But at the same time, then I've found that professors are very open to students using AI to help them study, to help them progress in their learning. And I think at this point, it's very obvious to all students that using AI passively to write your assignments is not what you are there in school for. Whether you choose to do that or not is another topic, but I do think that it's clear to students at all levels that doesn't necessarily constitute acceptable use.
I agree with what everyone said. In the past, I've actually had professors who are open-minded with AI and support it, and I've had other professors who are completely against it. One professor that I found incredibly enlightening was I was taking a class on disabilities, and she sort of highlighted how AI can sometimes help remove some barriers to learning for people who are maybe bilingual or have certain learning disabilities, and it can help them with that. So I thought that was an important way to look at it. I know certain professors are completely against it when it comes to writing and certain things like that, but I think it would be helpful for them to maybe set boundaries and guidelines, because as you said, it is here to stay. So I think it would be helpful to learn how to adapt to it and use it in a way that's efficient, instead of completely banning it or acting like people aren't going to use it, because I feel like most people probably will.
Yeah, thank you. So switching gears a little bit, as I've been coming to the end of my program, I've been looking for jobs and looking at job descriptions, and I've noticed, and it's interesting from the conversation earlier today, several jobs have now mentioned AI fluent, something about having AI capabilities in their job descriptions. And so I am curious, for you guys, what specific AI capability, hold on. Let me think the best way to ask this question. I wrote it down over here, actually. Is having AI, oh my gosh, sorry. Having AI skills going into the workforce, how important do you think that would be for you, and how are you approaching that, in your coursework, in your learning, so that you can translate that once you graduate into the workforce? There we go. I got it.
So I actually did my practicum over at the American Society of Clinical Oncology last semester, and there is a huge emphasis on learning how to use AI with the work that we've been doing. And I'd say the main thing that we used it for there was brainstorming ideas, or elaborating on certain topics that we already had, and then also we had to create a framework for something. And I remember I developed multiple frameworks, and we had their AI tool rank which framework was the best, and compare that to what we thought. And so we're just using it in that way, and learning how to what prompts to give it, because it depends. certain prompts like give a different answer. Like you could ask it like the same exact thing, but the way that you ask it affects like the quality of the work that it provides you. So I think it's important to like learn how to sort of like speak to it, like what to say and how to use it, and see like what factors it should decide, whether in comparison to like what like you should sort of like decide.
I would say that, AI capabilities would probably depend on what industry you end up wanting to go into, and even within that, what company. I've interviewed with companies that are like, we are really, we use very minimal AI, and then there's companies that are like, this will be available for you, please use it. And then there's people that are like, there are companies that are like, we have Claude, you can use it or you cannot use it. And I think in terms of preparing for that, again, I feel like I've just been a little repetitive about, being able to use it as a tool and not rely on it, because, ultimately you want to still be a productive member in, wherever you end up working. And so being able to think with it as opposed to just use it to get an assignment done, being able to add on top of it, or, do the work beforehand, see what AI outputs and see, okay, I kind of agree with that. Or honestly, sometimes correcting AI is a really good practice. Being able to look at something and say, I don't like that, or I think that's wrong, or how would this be applied in X context if that's what you're saying? You know what I mean? Like working with AI and like actually asking it to like explain something further or something like that, I think it might seem passive in terms of like the output, but you're actually taking what you've learned in a classroom and applying it to what is being fed to you and saying, this doesn't seem right, or I think we should approach it as X, Y, Z, is actually showing that you've understood some concept fundamentally and are asking, a machine to address it appropriately.
I think there's like a lot of trial and error to like figure out what's going, because this is like a new tool that we're all learning at the same time. So I think like going off of your point about knowing what to ask AI, I think that can only come from like experience. Like you kind of have to, give it some prompts see what output it's producing, and then also compare and contrast with your own work. Like how would I frame it otherwise, and like what's AI saying here instead? And then like knowing how to use it can only come from going back and forth with it multiple times and knowing how to use it as a tool in context of the industry you're aiming for. And again, like using it to complete something that you're assigned to is obviously not a good idea at all and should not be done. But I think like for brainstorming ideas, like for example, for my research proposal recently for coursework, we used it a lot to like brainstorm ideas, and our TA, she actually encouraged us, if you're having like writer's block, have it, give you a slight push as to what ideas or like how, and I think I use it a lot to see what else it could say, like in comparison to my own vocabulary. Because again, like I think you mentioned it being for like bilingual users. English isn't my first language, so I think when I first moved here, it did help me like kind of navigate like, oh, like maybe I could say this instead. And that kind of like gave me ideas, which I now see myself incorporating naturally. I don't need it to help me anymore. But I think those things can be really, really helpful in context of, like the workforce.
This might not be a fully formed thought, but it is a little bit in contrast to maybe what everyone else has said so far. Back in my dental school days, there were a few dental organizations that were using AI to detect caries in x-rays. And so dental professionals were being encouraged to use those tools because at that point it's a matter of efficiency. Like you can use an AI tool to detect something which is pretty straightforward to look at on an x-ray, like a cavity. It usually is like pretty clear when you observe an x-ray, but talking about like diffusion of innovations, which the dean had mentioned in a previous talk, a lot of older dentists are those like late adopters. And then you have a matter of your bottom line as a dental professional is being affected by whether or not you choose to use those products and whether you feel comfortable having AI diagnose caries in your patients as opposed to taking the time to look at it yourself. So I don't know what the right answer is there, but I think as we are encouraged by employers to be comfortable with AI, to use AI more and more, we might have those sorts of dilemmas come up, especially in like a healthcare profession.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do one more question, and then I know we wanted to do some questions from the audience. So what is one thing that you would want the faculty members in this room to walk away thinking about or maybe doing differently in their classroom from your perspective as a student? Not a critical thing, but just maybe something that you would think would be helpful in the learning environment.
I think it would be helpful for them to sort of be like open-minded to AI and like set boundaries for AI instead of completely like banning it. Because I think people, like a lot of people are using it now, like most students use it. So I think it's helpful to find a way to work with that and sort of adapt to it in a way that's like, that works for, you know, everyone instead of just completely like banning it and restricting it, but instead, you know, setting boundaries and being like, okay, like we can use it in this way, but not necessarily for like, you know, to do like the complete assignment, but like as a tool or as a supplemental. I think that would be helpful.
I think my answer varies based off of undergrad, master's, graduate level courses. I think there's certain skills that need to be learned without AI before we can, you know, feel like we can teach students to leverage those skills with AI. I think sometimes, like, if you have a scientific writing course, you should want to be able to meet those benchmarks without, you know, having AI say, oh, like XYZ, like you have to add those things. You want to be able to critically think and come to those, reach those points by yourself before you get to that point. I do think that, you know, in a situation like that, again, I think with AI being there, there's no way to really ignore it or completely ban it, like you say. I think maybe in a situation like that, you might want to introduce an assignment where you do it yourself, and like one of your professors did, also submit the assignment where AI reviewed it and redid it for you, and sort of invite the class to provide their opinions on it, because a lot of times, I also adjuncted, so like I've also told my own students that like oftentimes you might have better opinions than the AI machine, right? And in my own experience as a student, I found that too, where I might have a thought and it doesn't agree. But I would like to see professors and classrooms really allow for students to make mistakes with AI and learn with AI, and sort of, you know, it's a new tool for everyone, like we've mentioned. And I think there's, you know, a fine line between misuse and just not knowing how to use it properly. And I think we need to have these more open conversations in the classroom and invite assignments that allow you to maybe use AI or see how AI is making mistakes and take these assignments a step further.
Yeah, I think I really agree with you about the open discussion. I think like right at the beginning of the semester when we're going over what we're gonna do, I think this is also something that needs to be talked about. And I think like banning or restricting the use of AI completely can actually encourage misuse sometimes, because people are going to be using it either way. I think like having that open discussion between professors and students, like, oh, like how do you guys normally use AI in the context of a coursework like this, and having that open discussion about where it's appropriate to use it or not, and then having that fine line. I think like what you mentioned about not knowing how to use it and just like misusing it, like you just have to, that can only come from learning how to do it from like trial and error. And I think that open discussion can be very, very important in class, like, and like help reduce the stigma around using AI in school completely. So I think, yeah, I'll say like that's like an important takeaway from this is instead of not talking about it at all, it is actually, I think we can go a lot further than talking about it more in class.
I think also teaching that AI, like any source, has a point of view. It has been trained with certain assumptions, and sometimes those assumptions will come up in your output, and being able to have those clear discussions especially in like an intro class where you might be asked to give your perspective on some like foundational readings in public health, for example. AI will have a point of view about those readings as well, and being able to think critically about that output and how it might differ from your own point of view or the point of view of your professor, I think is a worthwhile discussion to have.
Thank you. I think we want to open it up for questions from the audience. If anyone has any questions for our panelists about teaching. Oh, I'm off. What?
No, you're.
Oh, I can't see over there.
Hi, Gilbert Gim from the HAP department here in the College of Public Health. Thank you for sharing these insights and thoughts. So this year, I teach a health policy course, and for the first time was open about AI use. The final assignment, I required an AI disclosure statement, just a brief paragraph, which AI tools were used and how they were used. Very eye-opening. So there are two real parts of the main deliverable. One is writing a health policy brief, roughly 750 to 1,000 words. The second part is preparing a PowerPoint presentation and giving a 7-minute summary, and then orally presenting that. The PowerPoint slides, the quality have increased dramatically this last year by being open about it. So thinking about employers and also the importance of communication, which was something we heard earlier, are there one or two skills that you feel faculty should really emphasize so that employers will value that? Maybe it's converting a draft PowerPoint slide into something more polished, or maybe it's letting AI summarize regulations. So rather than reading 970 pages of the Affordable Care Act, pulling out 3 provisions. Those are great applications. But for writing of the policy brief, the writing part, that's where I really struggle in terms of providing guidance. So if you have thoughts on one or two things that, as faculty, we should really emphasize to prepare students because employers want that. Maybe it's converting the PowerPoint slide. But yeah, your thoughts on that would be much appreciated.
I think the PowerPoint slides, like for sure, because even like at my practicum, we constantly had like meetings, and so like it's really important to know how to communicate like through like PowerPoints and like even like oral presentations. I know some people have used like AI to write scripts for their presentations and have found that helpful, but I think like it is definitely helpful for like the PowerPoints and like giving you ideas on like what to elaborate and things like that. So yeah, I think the PowerPoints is definitely a helpful skill. When it comes to writing, I think it's important for people to sort of like write their own, like write by themselves instead of like relying completely on AI, just because I know AI is very like robotic, and it's kind of obvious when you can like tell when someone wrote something using like completely AI, or like when they're presenting using AI. So I think it would definitely be helpful for like the PowerPoints, but when it comes to the writing, I think it's important to still encourage people to like write by themselves.
I actually disagree a little bit. I think with writing, you know, again, I'm a little hesitant about that, and I think that translates a little bit into like writing a presentation script. I think I've been to a couple presentations where you can tell when someone has read off of an AI script, and the script is great, but I think it removes that intentional human interaction and that level of, I guess, intimacy in, you know, an authentic human interaction. I think a big important skill that I can say right now is probably being able to improve what AI gives you. So if AI does give you a script, or it does give you a written, paragraph or whatnot, being able to look at that and say, oh, like this, you know, I can improve this, or I can take this sentence and actually take it in a different direction or something like that that might be more applicable. I can say that I actually had a friend who worked at a law firm for a little while, and he and 2 of the other new hires had leveraged AI to summarize I don't know what law people do, summarize some document, and 2 of them had used AI, and they got fired because they like referenced a precedent that didn't exist, because because AI had presented it to them and they used that, and it, if they were to take that to court, yeah. So I think being able to look at that, fact check it, and be able to, improve it, I think is really a big skill.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I actually had a recent experience where I was trying to get help from AI to polish my poster, sort of more the visuals on it. I didn't have any writing on it yet. I was just trying to figure out what colors I should use, which it was actually doing a great job helping me with that. Suggestions were genuinely helpful, but it actually made up its own text about what I should put on the poster, which wasn't even related to what I was trying to do. And it had these citations. There were multiple, actually, and it completely wasn't related to my poster or anything that I had remotely done at all. And it looked really legit. So if I hadn't known my work, or if it was someone else that was looking at it, they may have thought that, this is what's supposed to go on this. But I think it's really, really important to know your work and have ownership of your work. And I think it's really important to have your own voice when talking about your work, and not have AI, it can sound very robotic and generic, and you can tell when something is completely written by AI. And I think the false citation thing, I've heard it from a lot of people, that it does like doing that a lot. It will produce its own thing. And I think it's really, really important to be careful about these things and know where it can be completely false and where it, it can be accurate. For example, the PowerPoint presentation can be helpful, it can help you polish your presentation, but I don't think it's a good idea to have it completely write your text for you, or have it completely write your speech for you. And I think it's also really obvious when it does that.
Yeah, I agree with everything. I think the last thing I have to add is that as students, these models are becoming more and more powerful, and they're hallucinating less and less, but the models that students are using are often the free versions, and they are much lower quality, and they do still hallucinate a decent amount. And so if students are using AI and disclosing AI use in a course, and they've used it specifically for writing, because I think that's where almost all of the hallucination is when you ask it to produce an essay for you, or to write a bibliography for you, or a works cited page. Just to be cautious that because your students are often using that lower quality model, the likelihood of those hallucinations is much greater.
Thank you. Okay, well, I think we're out of time, so I want to thank our panelists for coming and for their insights, and for everyone for listening.